What's going on, guys? Kevin here from thesportsgeek.com, and in this video I'm going to go over my DraftKings and FanDuel NFL Week 7 picks. And this week I'm going to do things a little bit different. In this video I'm going to go over my quarterback and wide receiver picks. I've thrown in a couple extra picks, and then as long as this video gets enough likes or thumbs up on YouTube, I'll do a video tomorrow, which is Friday, with my favorite running back, tight end, and defense picks for NFL Week 7. All right, so before we move on to my NFL Week 7 picks, let's take a look back at my picks from last week's video. It was a really strange week for me. Most of the picks I gave out in last week's video were pretty average. A lot of them were in the low double digits, so they were the type of picks where you could have them in your lineup and they wouldn't kill your lineup, but they probably wouldn't help you get to the top of a GPP payout. But I did have two solid picks on the left-hand side. You can see we had LeSean McCoy with 37 points. He had a monster game. Cam Newton was one of the quarterbacks I liked last week. He had 30 points. And then the only real bad pick was AJ Green. He still put up 14.8 points, but given his price, I will categorize that as a bad pick. So really average week for me overall. I did give out an email, or I sent out an email on Sunday morning, I believe, or Saturday morning, stating that I did like Drew Brees a little more than Cam Newton with a couple of the Panther cornerbacks out. So that was another good pick as well. Make sure you're signed up for my email updates. I send those out on Saturday or Sunday morning. All you have to do to get on the email list is click on that lineup tool link in the YouTube description below. So again, this week I had some good emails from people who won over at DraftKings or FanDuel. On the left-hand side there, you can see Brian. He was in a $5 contest and won $300, placing second. Congrats, Brian. That's a big win. And then on the right-hand side there, you can see Brandon. He said he turned $36 into $156 using LeSean McCoy and Lamar Miller in every lineup. So congrats to you, Brandon. If your name wasn't up here, if you didn't have a winning week in Week 6, hopefully you're sending in a screenshot this week after Week 7. All right, so moving on to my DraftKings and FanDuel NFL Week 7 picks, the quarterback and wide receiver edition. We're going to start off with the QB wide receiver stack. We've got Andy Dalton from the Bengals at $6,000 on DraftKings, paired with his number one receiver, AJ Green, who's $8,600 on DraftKings this week. The Bengals are at home versus Cleveland as 10-point favorites with a total set at 45.5 points. The Browns rank 26th in yards against per play, 28th in passing yards against per attempt, and 31st in fantasy points against to quarterbacks. Dalton has put up 21 or more DraftKings points in 4 of his 6 games this year, and although he doesn't have a huge game so far this year, I expect him to have a big game and hopefully get closer to 30 DraftKings points this week. AJ Green has had 2 games over 36 DraftKings points already this season, and he's had 8 or more targets in each game played. I expect a big game from both of these players, and they're definitely one of my favorite stacks for this week. My second quarterback wide receiver stack here is going to be Kirk Cousins from the Redskins. He's $5,900 on DraftKings, paired with Jamison Crowder, who's $4,300 on DraftKings. The Redskins are at Detroit as 1-point underdogs in a game with a total currently at 49.5 points. So we've got a high Vegas total in this game. The Lions rank 30th in yards against per play, 27th in passing yards against per attempt, and 32nd in fantasy points against to quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins has just one game with over 20 DraftKings points this year, but he had 3 over 30 DraftKings points in his final 8 games last year. And I think this game versus a bad Lions defense sets up pretty well for Cousins to have a pretty big fantasy scoring day. It's tough to pick a receiver with Cousins as he spreads it out quite a bit, but Crowder has put up double-digit DraftKings points in 5 of his 6 games this year, and he draws the best wide receiver cornerback matchup in the slot versus the Lions. We also have to watch on news about Deshaun Jackson and Jordan Reed, and if they're both out, Crowder gets a bump, but if they're both back in, I would also pair Cousins with either of them in some stacks if you want to. My third quarterback wide receiver stack this week is going to be Marcus Mariota from the Titans. He's $6,000 on DraftKings this week, paired with his receiver Kendall Wright, who's $3,700 on DraftKings. The Titans are at home versus the Colts as 2.5-point favorites with a total currently set at 47.5 points. After a slow start to the season, Mariota has put up 30 and 28 DraftKings points his last 2 games, with 60 or more rushing yards in each of those games. The Colts defense ranks 31st in yards against per play, 26th in passing yards against per attempt, and 23rd in fantasy points against to quarterbacks. So this is a risky stack with Wright, who played just 35% of the snaps last week, but he did get targeted 9 times and caught 8 balls for 133 yards and a touchdown. And in my opinion, he's the best receiver on the Titans. But only getting 35% of the snaps kind of worries me. It's definitely a GPP play, and I wouldn't have too much exposure to Wright if you're going to play him. And same thing kind of goes with Mariota. I'm not going to have too much exposure because I think this is a game that the Titans could decide to run the ball a little more than they have the last 2 weeks. But I think the upside is there for Mariota and Wright. So I'll throw them in a couple lineups, maybe in the Millie Maker this week, and hope for the best. But definitely a GPP stack here, and one that I would kind of limit my exposure to. Next up, we got a receiver here. We got Allen Robinson from the Jaguars. He's $7,300 on DraftKings this week. The Jags are at home versus the Raiders as 1.5-point favorites with the total set at 47 points. The Raiders rank dead last in yards against per play, passing yards against per attempt, and fantasy points against to wide receivers. So their defense has been pretty brutal outside of maybe 1 or 2 games. They've been pretty awful this year. Allen Robinson has yet to break out for a big game. But last year he had 6 100-plus yard games and 14 touchdowns on the season. And against this Raiders defense at home, I expect Allen Robinson to have a big game. And I like him quite a bit this week at $7,300 on DraftKings. And then my last receiver for this video is going to be Julian Edelman from the Patriots, $6,500 on DraftKings. The Patriots are at Pittsburgh as 7-point favorites with a total set at 47 points. In 2 games with Brady back, Edelman has been targeted 10 and 7 times, and he hasn't done too much with those targets, but this might be the week for Edelman to break out. The Steelers rank 29th in yards against per play and 21st in passing yards against per attempt, and the Patriots offense could have the ball quite a bit in this game with Big Ben injured. The Steelers are going to have to turn to their backup, Landry Jones. So I think New England could have control of the ball quite a bit, and Edelman should get his usual maybe 7 to 10 targets. And I like him to do a little more with those targets this week against the Steelers. So I think Edelman at 6,500 is a great play this week. If you want to win more money at DraftKings and FanDuel this year, I highly recommend you check out the Fantasy Labs tool. I'll leave my link in the YouTube description below. Check them out. They're the best tools out there in my opinion. If you enjoyed this video, please click that like or thumbs up button. It will help support my channel and let me know that you guys want me to keep doing these videos. And if I can get 1,000 likes on this video by Friday, I'll put up a Week 7 running back, tight end, and defense video for Week 7 DraftKings and FanDuel picks. As always, guys, good luck with your contest this week. Hope you make some money. Cheers. If you don't want to miss out on any videos that I post, I would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. To do that, just click on this button over here. Or if you want to watch another one of my videos that I think you'll enjoy, click on the video image over here.